Now today we're talking about blocking in your painting with a limited earth palette. And it's limited because it represents just blue, red, and yellow, three primaries. But it's an earth palette because yellow ochre and burnt sienna are earth colors. There's a little bit of all three primaries in them. Burnt sienna is a red or a red-orange, but it has the other two primaries in it. So it's earth color, it's muted, it's more natural looking. Same thing with the yellow ochre, it's yellow with a little bit of blue and red. And the ultramarine blue is of course just blue, so it's more of a pure color. Some artists will use a indigo blue, which is blue and black in a tube. And that gives a really nice earth palette, a real natural looking palette. And with that, you can really focus on values and color temperature. The ochre and burnt sienna being warm and the blue being cool, and you can get good temperature contrast. And you can get good value contrast. The color is limited. And there's something to that, a very limited color with a nice harmonious feel because you're using the same three colors and they're more muted. Similar to this painting here, this is by Frank Brangwyn, Irish painter, early 20th century. And you can see, and he might be using black here instead of blue. Black, yellow, ochre, and burnt sienna. The stronger colors, right in here on the ship, where it's more of a gold color, is a little bit more pure yellow ochre. Not much pure, but purer than in here, which is more the burnt sienna and black, or burnt sienna and blue, whichever he's using. But the values are very accurate, and that's what makes it work. So good composition, good values, with a little bit of suggested color really makes a beautiful painting. I mean, for centuries, that's how people thought about painting. And then along came the Impressionists and just messed everything up with all that pure color. But that's what we like. We like the more pure color, but it has to work. And using this limited earth palette forces you to think value first because you can't match the color. There are some, I've painted some in the Utah desert where everything is just a ochre, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue. I mean, that's all I really need. But most cases, you can't represent what you see color-wise, but you can represent the temperature, the warm and the cool, because you have the two warm earth colors and the cool blue. You can get temperature, warm and cool, sunlight and shadow, and you can get the values right, and that's what makes it work. So think along those lines. I've got some paintings here I want to talk about where they use earth colors and how effective it is, and can still look colorful. You know, this green in the water is either black and yellow ochre or blue and yellow ochre. It looks like black. I think he's using black, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre here, and of course white. But the black can look very blue in some areas next to the ochre and the burnt sienna. So it can look blue. It takes the place of blue. But it's not something you just do once. You have to commit to it maybe for a week or two doing, 5 or 6, 7 paintings, and you really get a feel for how important values are. And you can really set up colors fairly close. They just won't match, which is what we want to get away from anyway. So another painting here, I think this is also Frank Brangwyn. And this is also earth colors. This looks real strong because it's just more pure ochre and burnt sienna. Little bit of blue or black in here. But you can get a feel of stronger color just by using one or two of the colors. In this case, the ochre or ochre with a little bit of burnt sienna. Everything else is so muted, this looks stronger because all this stuff is so muted and dark. So you can give the appearance of stronger color by getting more muted around it. Here's another one. Again, this is Frank Brangwyn. Just the black, blue, or black and yellow ochre and burnt sienna. You can see the stronger color here is more just straight burnt sienna. I don't know, you might have a little bit of a medium red. But the palettes we usually use will have more pure color. And that's where you get the stronger colors. Separation. You don't get color harmony as well. You can see if I cover up the girl's reddish orange dress, which is different than everything else, you can see everything is very harmonious, slightly muted. There's no color that really jumps out, but now it does because he's used a limited palette of, again, probably maybe black, blue, ochre, and burnt sienna, or maybe Indian red. Indian red is another earth red that's good to use. Then at the end, he came in with a stronger red, maybe a reddish orange that's more of a cadmium. And that jumps out. So he's used the limited palette to block things in, and then came back with a stronger color to really stand out. And that's real effective. Also, the scarf on the girl's head there is a bit more of a red, although that's probably the Indian red he used. But this is definitely either Indian red with some cad yellow, or it's a cad red medium to really stand out from everything else. But these colors are all mixed with yellow ochre, Indian red, ultramarine blue. It looks like he has Indian red instead of burnt sienna. But Indian red is also an earth color. Now this is Dean Cornwell, illustrator. And illustrators used a lot of black and white because it was printed in black and white. But it wasn't a straight black and white. You can see, again, it's limited. It's a burnt sienna and black with yellow ochre, or Indian red, one or the other. Just some kind of earth red and yellow. And then he comes in with more of a cadmium red and hits on the girl's dress here, a little bit of blue up here that's stronger. So you can see, once again, if you get everything blocked in with muted colors, earth color, limited, you can come back and decide where you want the color the strongest. And again, you can put it anywhere. You can come in here and decide, I can somewhat do the same value and make the dress more of a muted violet instead of a... And then that color pops out, again, because everything else is so muted. But the more color you add everywhere, again, same value, just more color, then you're starting to lose the harmony. Or you don't have quite as much harmony because we're using stronger, colors in areas. Then things start to pop. But even here, these stronger colors jump out because everything else is so muted. But the more color I add everywhere, the more I lose that harmony, and pretty soon all the color starts screaming at you from everywhere. Now this is a painting by John Folensby, Impressionist painter, early 20th century, and I like this painting, but it's more color oriented. There are good values in there, but the color is what carries everything, and doesn't have the harmony like this one does, or this one does. So it's not that one's necessarily better than the other, but the idea that you can work with color harmony better, you can decide what's going to stand out more than something else by blocking in with a very limited palette, then deciding where the more pure color is going to go. And that's what we're working with here. Earth colors first, and then more pure colors afterwards. And as I'm adding the pure color, I still want harmony. Now this is very limited pure color. This is, just on the railing here and on the dress. But we can still achieve color harmony here as well, but it's not the same color harmony. It's not as strong. The painting doesn't hold together quite as well. And he's aware of that. He just wants to emphasize color. It's hard to do both. It's hard to get really good values and really good color. One has to kind of dominate over the other. And that's what the Impressionists chose to do, was think in terms of more pure color and how that affects depth and sunlight and shadow. So the broken color of the cool colors in the shadow and the warm colors in the light. There's no thought of earth colors here. And here, again, we're working more with earth colors and less with pure color. I have one more painting here. This painting is in Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. Really nice painting. This doesn't do it much justice. But a lot of black, burnt sienna, and ochre, maybe Indian red instead of burnt sienna, but an earth color for red and yellow. And black, some blue, maybe a bluish black and indigo blue. But values very accurate, and he's got some color where he wants it. This doesn't have too much color. There is a lot more color in the shadows, because the shadows are so big. It's such a big part of the painting. The shadows are. He breaks it up with some stronger color. But it's that harmony of that limited earth color that pulls things together and allows the stronger color to stand out more. Again, after we get it to this stage, we can use more pure color. So I might use a cad yellow ultramarine blue with some red and just get a stronger color in here. I can still gray it. Even gray colors, where I'm using more pure colors, will stand out more. So using like a alizarin crimson, cad orange, so a red, violet, and a red orange with a little bit of blue, it gives me a stronger grayer color than if I use earth color like burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and a little blue. So you can vary things color-wise. Still have it somewhat muted. But I'm also doing this on top of the grayer, more muted color, and if some of that shows through, it works a lot better because you have some grayer color, some stronger, more pure color next to each other. Again, you can always come back and push things. He's got things very grayed to start with. But you can see the point. Stronger colors can really emphasize more on top of more muted earth colors. And that's kind of the goal here. Now I still prefer really strong color, but there's something about understanding the limited earth colors that you block things in with. They used to call it dead painting. You kind of paint with earth colors first, let it dry for a few days, and then paint back on top of it. The first stage is kind of the dead painting because it's somewhat dead color, and then you put the color on top. Your values are already set up, your drawing is already set up, and you can just scrub color on top. And that's real effective. Now that isn't alla prima painting or painting outside. You don't necessarily do that outside. But in the studio, where you have time to mess with a limited palette first and then a stronger palette, it's real effective. So if we look at some photographs here and we think compositionally first, this one's actually set up pretty good compositionally. Darkest dark is right here. It's too much over on the corner close to the edge, so I'd probably want my darkest dark, even though it's further back in here, some accents in there, maybe in here, accent or two there, but I wouldn't want it over here, even though technically that's correct. It's closer to you, but it's too close to the edge and out of the center of interest. Now in this photograph, the blues are real strong. Yellows are fairly strong, yellows down in here. But this would be a good one to do with a limited palette first, then come back, and then you have the option of just having the strongest color in the leaves, maybe slightly more muted and a little bit in the grass, and then punch up a little bit of strong, cool color with more pure colors in the shadows on the trunks. And you can push that as much as you want, but you'll have the values all set up with the blue, yellow ochre, and burnt sienna. Indian red would be an option too instead of burnt sienna. I just kind of like the burnt sienna right now a little better than the Indian red. But remember, you can't match color. I won't be able to match this blue, and I wouldn't want to. I think that's too, there's just no harmony in this real strong blue, real strong yellow, strong green. Start off more muted, then you can push it a bit more. This one also, values are set up pretty good. I would want to, again, decide the trees right here, right in the middle. So I'm going to decide, do I want more of this side or do I want more of that side? Can't have both because that puts the trees right in the middle. So I'd probably crop a little bit here because I want some of that stream going around the edge. Now that gets the tallest tree out of center. The trees go past the center. They don't stop right at the middle. And I don't have this V between the mountains right in the center either. So I might want to raise this, some of these trees back in here. These darker trees. A little bit bigger, not as big as the ones that are more in the center of interest, but a little bit bigger and maybe a bit stronger color eventually. But could even hit a little bit of sunlight hitting the bottom of that. And that would balance it off a little bit more. Compositionally, it needs something over here. Not as big as the trees on the right side, but something smaller to balance it. We're not looking for equal weight and shape, but just something to balance. This one too is a good one. There's good strong contrast. Right away you notice that the sky and the water are too close to the same value. I would darken the water slightly and or lighten the sky just a bit. A lot of sunlight here. You have a pretty strong tangent of the edge of the shadow there lining up with the edge of the rock. And I don't like this rock anyway. It's just something outside of the picture plane that kind of pokes its head in. It doesn't have anything to do with in here. It doesn't help it. So I would eliminate it one way or the other. I do like the big slanted hillside here, the dark trees against the real light background back in there. So that's my focal point, probably this area. Right in here is kind of my focal area. So I want to eliminate a little more on the left side. And I really like the dark cliff over there, but again, you have to focus on what's important and just cut out the other stuff. Even though you might like it, the goal is to create a good composition, not to paint everything that's in the photograph. So that works. That makes a little bit better composition. It makes the focal point bigger because I've eliminated stuff on the sides and top and bottom. And I don't have anything dead center. Maybe this tree's dead centers, but I can move it slightly one way or the other. And the shadow pattern is real strong. And even though the water's real light, again, I would darken the water slightly anyway, but I'd create a real strong shadow pattern that includes the water, the shadow in front, the shadow down the hill here, and it would travel up the hill. So it'd kind of travel up this way, and I'd create a pattern in here. I do have more, a lot of little darks and lights in these cliffs, but don't get caught up in that. I would block it in one value first. In other words, but the sun is coming this way and it's hitting the edge of these cliffs. So if I block this background in one value, the dark shadow value, the rocks, maybe the lights in here, then come back and just hit a few lights in here, a little bit of reflected light underneath these rocks there. Reduce that detail in there, and this can be a real effective composition. This is in Wyoming. And same thing here. Now this picture I put in here because it is more of an earth palette. This is in southern Utah. A lot of burnt sienna, blue, a little bit of ochre in here. Now there's several variations. This darker stain on the rock has more blue in it. The lighter has more red and yellow ochre in it. But start with one overall value and then add another two values and colors in there. But it'll all be that earth palette with the red kind of predominating. Same thing, the greens down in here don't have to match these greens, but it does have to look sunlit. And yellow, ochre, and blue makes a very muted but very sunlit looking green. Some of the greens will have more ochre, some of the greens like the shrubbery will have more blue. So you can get variations, and they can be very effective to suggest what's there. I'm still doing the same thing with the limited earth palette. I still look at this and I see red or red-orange. So red ochre with a little bit of blue. Here I see yellow-green, so it's yellow ochre, a little bit of blue, and then maybe a touch of burnt sienna. So you're still thinking in terms of color on the color wheel. Just don't have that expectation of trying to match. This is blue with a little bit of burnt sienna. And burnt sienna, it's such an earth color that with the blue, you don't really need to add the ochre to it. It's going to stay very muted and cool and stay back there. So go for value, not color recognition, but you can still get pretty close. Not that you're after that. This will help us get away from just copying the photo, focus more on values, and then use stronger color where we want something to stand out.